tablets and laptops, just PC-ness in general, kind of everybody says that's a big deal. Interactive whiteboards and flat panels comes in second place, but it's very closely tied with video conferencing in terms of all three being in the top 3 box is what we call it in the market research world. And note that 20% of the people who responded say video conferencing. What I really love about this survey is that we don't have any criteria, we don't have any specific requirements that people be using video conferencing or lecture capture or any of these technologies when they take the survey. So it's like we're making, by saying that, I'm saying that there's no bias in the survey, that it's people who we insisted use any particular technology. So that was really exciting to me when I saw that. Then lecture capture, recording, and archiving is in 4th place. Adaptive learning programs are in 5th. Enhanced quality Wi-Fi services comes in 6th. Smartphones, and you can kind of run down the list, social media apps, web conferencing, online collaborative workspaces, and by that I mean sort of the Google Classroom, SmartAmp, Spark kind of Cisco Spark kind of workspaces, student video sharing solutions, which really is sort of a subset of streaming video. It's where maybe students are doing learner-generated video. Polling, testing software, and clickers, you got about 12%. Augmented virtual reality and learning relationship managers. And one of the other things to say about this is that some of these, they're always flat. Like every year, polling, testing software, clickers, same number of people. You got about 10 to 12% of educators who they want to use those in the classroom. They say they're important in their outcomes, and the usage does not vary year to year. So I'm going to jump down. Sorry to give everybody some vertigo. That's how it's changed from year to year. This is, do you care about higher education, or you want me to go to K-12, Jan?
Well, we've got a higher educator here. Jim might like to know that stuff.
Jim, shall I share this with you? I'll run through it, and I'll try to talk about maybe some differentiation. I'm not at all surprised that lecture capture is the single most impactful technology. Highest number percentages that selected that. That's about 36 or 37% in total. Video conferencing, again, is number 2. In this case, tablets and laptops start to drop down. And I actually think one of the reasons is when you start to get into the segments, it's taken for granted. People in higher ed are more used to it. They've been around a lot longer. It took a while for one-to-one and BYOD to appear in K-12. So that's in 3rd place. And the other really surprising thing, and I'd love to hear from Jim about that, is I was surprised that interactive whiteboards and flat panels are in 4th place, ahead of smartphones, ahead of web conferencing, and the whole notion of virtual classrooms. So that's sort of the break there. The other interesting thing to me is enhanced quality Wi-Fi services. Notice that about 2 out of 5, 19%, are saying that is the most impactful in terms of outcomes. That number is going to jump when you all look at K-12 here in a second. Yeah. But again, did you want to say something, Jim?
Yeah, one of the questions that I actually had as you were looking at the aggregated data is if you have a geographic breakdown, because I would imagine, now I'm in the state of Minnesota, and I would imagine that in the state of Minnesota, enhanced quality Wi-Fi services would be up higher, because in greater Minnesota, that is still a challenge. Whereas in metropolitan and urban areas, I could see where lecture capture, for example, and video conferencing would rise to the top, because Wi-Fi is no longer a consideration. You've got that just about everywhere.
Right.
And perhaps the difference, and you alluded to this, the difference would be more dramatic in the high school, that you'll see the Wi-Fi services really jump up.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And the other thing is, in higher ed, though, a lot of colleges and universities, they've already got that nut cracked. They didn't 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but they have the nut cracked now. So the assumption is, it's there. It's sort of like it becomes part of the infrastructure, and you don't even think of it as something that's affecting learning outcomes. It's just the same as having a telephone over there. You know what I mean?
You're getting a lot of programs now that are online only or hybrid classes. And so you're right, that has become a part of the experience of students. Right.
So notice here, and back to that polling, testing, and clickers, notice here you got 11%. No, I'm sorry, not 11. You got 13%, so slightly higher in higher ed. Now I'm going to take you down to K-12. Sorry for giving everybody vertigo. It's just I got all kinds of bad habits, and there's one of them. All right. So this is K-12, and this was a larger number. I think we had something like 180 or so respondents here. Tablets and laptops. If you think about, remember, it was not as important in higher ed, but think about the fact that the wave of tablets and laptops and just getting computers into your students' hands has really only taken place in the last few years. So the teachers completing this, and it's mostly teachers. There's some administrators and IT people or computer tech people. Interactive whiteboards and flat panels is number 2. Adaptive learning programs is number 3. Enhanced quality Wi-Fi is number 4. So notice that that's jumped up in importance because people are either really wanting it or they're getting it and they're saying, hey, this is really making a difference that we got it. All of a sudden our BYOD program's working better because we got better Wi-Fi. And then video conferencing is in 5th place, but notice that 17% of the people we surveyed made it their number 1 choice. So it ties with tablets and laptops and interactive whiteboards and flat panels in terms of being most impactful. So that's a telling thing. It's even more important. Not everybody does adaptive learning, so maybe that's why that number's smaller in terms of being most impactful. But that number is pretty impressive, and it really, again, sort of surprised me. I'm expecting. Again, I told y'all I was going to run this survey again this fall, but I'm expecting some of these to grow. I'm expecting online collaborative workspaces to grow. I'll be surprised if that doesn't. Smartphones probably should be growing. The last thing to say about it, though, is this stuff goes through cycles. So we find that there'll be a year where people say, this is more important to me, or this is really impactful, and then things will kind of drop off for a year, and then whereas people sort of get in the reality of, wait a minute, this is harder to use, or they lose interest in a particular area, and then another group of people comes along, the next wave of adopters. So I typically see some fluctuation, but I'm sitting here, so I will sit behind these numbers and say I like them.
Yeah.
Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I predict that the student video sharing solutions is going to explode in this next year. I've seen a huge interest in a product that Sean introduced me to called Flipgrid, and it's just blowing up on Twitter right now.
I believe it. Flipgrid, I need to check them out. I spoke at Sonic Foundry. That's a streaming and lecture capture company. I spoke at their user group meeting in Wisconsin a couple of months ago, and there was a lot of interest in what they call My Media Site, which is their end user learner record video app that runs on Android and iPhone OSs. And I saw some really amazing stuff happening, like, nursing students recording, here's how you use this equipment, and then just that going into a repository this is stuff that these students only get taught once or twice, and once they only use it once a month, and they need to have a quick way to go figure out how to use it. So anyway, I agree with you.
Yeah. I also think you're going to see the interactive whiteboards coming down. There's been a big movement toward personalizing learning and getting away from the teacher in the front of the classroom directing instruction.
Yeah.
The newer schools are not putting any equipment up in the front of the room any longer. They want small groups to be working together more cooperatively, and they want the flexibility of the spaces.
So, Glenn, I want to wager you some money. Maybe I'll wager you dinner, because I think the markets are split, or your community is split, and there are a new class of products that are think about Microsoft Surface Hub, Sparkboard from Cisco. Google has their Jamboard. Now, a lot of that is those guys are saying we want to get an interactive flat panel into a conference room because everybody else is doing it, and it's part of their whole suite of unified communications or suite of team workspace products. But in education, smart's kind of starting to turn smart technology. Excuse me. The whiteboard guys. They're starting to kind of turn things back around, and they're focusing where they've been trying to focus on corporate as learning and corporate environments as well as education. They're focusing more on it. They're back to saying we're just doing education. That's the sweet spot, and instructors do want to be on a flat panel or do want to be on an interactive whiteboard, but they want, the difference is now they have to tie together all those tablets and laptops and smartphones in the classroom. So, there's some people who still want to be teaching that way, I guess.
Yeah, they were pervasive at ISTE, I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
But I've just seen the new schools that are being constructed have changed the shape of those classrooms to that if these are going to be popular, it's going to be in a small group setting so that they're able then to collect those thoughts. It's not going to be teacher directed as much as it's been.
I totally agree.
Original vision.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm on my local school board, and we had our meeting last night, and one of the classrooms that we saw has a smart board in the front, but then it has, and these are Epson projectors with sort of a melamine screen space, and if you imagine a rectangle, 1/3 of it is blocked off so that they could write stuff, but the other third, these projectors operate similar to smart boards, and so the students have the opportunity to work, Glenn, as you're talking about, in small groups. The teacher can control that and bring it back to center, but can push it out, and so all of the walls had these projectors on there so that they could work in groups of, say 4, 5, and 6, either on different assignments or similar assignments divided up in some fashion. And the fact of the matter is that in our particular district, since you can get those machines for like half the cost of a smart board, they're looking to create a number of those classrooms. So at least in little old St. Clair, it ain't going away. They're just starting to embrace it.
Yeah, and the prices have come down a good bit, Glenn. So, it's a commodity to have a whiteboard. The tricky part is how do you tie it all together? And so, what's the software, and what are your presentation systems? Is it a wireless presentation system or not? So they're not, stuff never completely goes away. Sometimes new trends come along, but the way we've been doing things for a while doesn't always go away immediately.
Well, Lori's going to have to come out of retirement then and get excited all over. I think that's the bottom line here.
All right. I will be quiet, and that's the end of my piece. Any other questions from you fine folks?
Is there a way to get a copy of that report you're showing?
I'm supposed to charge for it.
No, I mean, that's all right. Even if you have to charge for it, I'd just love to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Can you shoot me an email after this call, and I'll network you to the people who are responsible for this?
Sure thing.
Doing that stuff, and sure. I'll,
being one of the, or possibly the only current active teacher, I don't know. But I think going off of what Alan was saying, it'll definitely be interesting to see, especially where I am now, going from like a 1-to-1 iPad to now where there's like classroom sets for 10, and then I have now an interactive whiteboard. But with things like how Seesaw is doing the e-portfolios and making it a lot easier to do small group work, and you can post something and then they can show it visually where you might not need the interactive whiteboard, or Class Dojo is then somewhat piggybacking off of Seesaw and vice versa. I think as like those two continually duke it out, or this e-portfolio world grows, it'll really be interesting to see how big of an impact that has in the interactive whiteboard world. Because like in Alaska, in remote Alaska, I used interactive whiteboards, and now it's back into my realm, I guess, this year. But then being one-to-one and doing Seesaw, where you can post images and gather all of their learning and recording, you don't really need, like, I don't know. But then again, every teacher teaches differently. It'll truly be interesting to see where it goes from here as everything evolves.
There's been so much push toward collaborative teamwork and small group work, as Glenn referenced earlier. You still got to have a way to kind of bring everybody back together. I almost think all of these iPads and tablets and desktops and kind of e-portfolio platforms, what they do is, I had a great analogy here for a second. They're sort of like breakout rooms in web conferencing. They're, if you were doing virtual teaching for years ago, there were only a handful of web conferencing platforms that really had a decent breakout room. But if they had one, then that's how you'd have people go off and do group work, and then they'd come back and they'd share that with people or talk about what they've figured out and so forth. And in a way, it's the same thing, just in a physical environment.
Yeah, just even seeing like in the last 3 years since moving to Korea, and just the evolution with all that, it's been crazy to see just where I was relying on smart boards to where now it'd be weird to actually be going back to it, and how much I'll actually rely on it, or how much I'll rely on whatever else.
Yeah.
Haley, were you raising your hand?
Sorry, I don't know why, but in the conference room I'm at, if I don't move, the light keeps clicking off, and then it gets really hard to see everyone. So yeah, if I throw my hand up, I'm not trying to speak. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we know about those sensors. What you just said, Alan, gave me an idea for maybe one of our next advisory board meetings. We've got 12 people on this call. There's a couple that couldn't make it, but it might be kind of cool to use the breakout rooms built into Zoom for our advisory board to have a couple of different discussions going on at the same time, because we've got more than one area of focus. So yeah, technology is one great discussion, but think about our other committees, like the one Linda talked about. That committee's doing really great work, but we've got some other areas that we need to start working on as well, that we could possibly discuss at our next meeting, like global education and content provider services. Those were the ones that had the most interest from you guys as far as what committee you wanted to be on. The one that didn't get anybody's hand up and excited was grants. Except for Dave, you said you would help with grants, but I think I'll just put that on the back burner. Let's talk just a minute about our global education.
Well, Jan, can we go back for just 1 second?
Sure.
When we talked about two things. We talked about our exhibition programs, and each month we're going to have either some new programming or some programming that we want to make sure we bring back out into the limelight. But then we're also going to have each month something from our national parks. And when we introduced that, I think, Jim, you wanted to talk a little bit about an idea that you have regarding national parks that we caught here on the text.
Well, simply, my brother happens to be a producer and director of film for national parks, and has done extensive work. And there are his daughter happens to be the chief interpretive ranger at Chaco Canyon. I think that there's an untapped resource there that could really be exploited by Silk, whether it were to be simply for the older folk who may not have that kind of chance to travel out to Katmai in Alaska, but also students as well. And I think that there may be, and I'd be happy to explore this, an opportunity there, because National Parks is very, very interested in bringing the parks to everybody and exposing, in a way, the wealth that they've got. So whether it be we're just simply videos, because there are tons of interpretive films that are out there, or actually getting interpretive rangers to to participate through Silk. I really think that there's an opportunity.
Yeah. I could answer that too, but Haley's raising her hand with the right protocol.
Yes. I was just going to mention, I know on our KCOE profile on CILC, it doesn't talk about it anywhere, and that's because we don't offer it like nationally, but we have actually partnered with our Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks Rangers in California. So they come down, it's about 2 days a month, sometimes 3, and we try to do 3 to 4 programs every time. So they offer 4 different programs on owls, bears, bats, and then a Meet Your National Parks. And then we also work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers up at Lake Cahuilla. They also come down to our studio, and they have 3 different programs on soils, Lake Cahuilla Terminus Dam, and about endangered species. So I was just going to say, I think that that's an awesome idea because I know that the ones we have here in California locally in the Central Valley are already working with us as an Office of Ed to try and get the word out. They do the programs for free. It doesn't cost anything. And I know that there's like a huge push for the Every Kid in a Park. It's like a little brochure that they send home, and every 4th grade kid, if they sign up online and they take the little pass with them, they and their whole family can get into the park for free. So it's definitely a great idea. We're doing it here in California. So if anyone has, any contacts, I definitely say urge them to try and start video conferencing. I know that ours have mentioned wanting to do more because they go out to a lot of schools, and it's hard because they have to drive so many places, but they didn't have necessarily the funds or the location to set up a studio. But if you're in a specific region, reach out, because more than likely they'd be willing to come into your studio and utilize it, or you could get them going with it. So that's what we did.
Yeah. Jim, we do want to pursue it. Jan and I have talked a lot about national parks, one of our favorite resources that we have available. And I think the last time we met, we've got a number of national parks that are already partners with us. And we talked about getting up to the national headquarters to see if we might do a more enterprise initiative where we can help any and all of the parks provide some of that outreach and even create a channel space for them. So I think we would like to pursue that with you. They are some of the most popular programs that we also have for a number of our K-12 students. And you're absolutely right. Our lifelong learners, our seniors, have been lifetime lovers of our national parks. They can't get out and get deep into the woods anymore. And I think they would really enjoy refreshing those experiences and reliving them and getting new experience. So we will follow up with you, Jim. Great idea.
And you too, Haley. We're not quite full on our expeditions programs with parks people, and maybe we could borrow some of yours to be included in that program as well. But yeah, that niche is really exciting, especially to the teachers out there, especially since it's always free. So great resource and great committee. I can see Jim and Haley and myself and anybody else that's interested in the parks doing some work in a committee setting on that. I'd love to meet your brother, Jim. The last thing
You're muted though. Sorry, Jim.
They're free. That it's nice because they don't charge, and they have a lot of expertise and a lot of access. So, anything that John, my brother, can do, I know that he'd step up. He gives master classes at the.
Can we set up a meeting deep into one of the parks so that Jan and I have to come with you to visit?
Well, only if I get to go.
Absolutely.
That sounds
All right,
great.
thank you. And Jan, did you want to visit quickly about JDL Horizon?
Well, I mentioned it briefly when I was talking about capturing some of the content from our expeditions program, and I asked Alan to hit on it a little bit with his data. So yeah, you can give a little update on JDL.
Well, let me just give you a quick minute as our time is running, but we had the pleasure of Tom Lapping, who's the CEO and president of JDL Horizons. He brought his team out to San Antonio and actually sat through the content provider work at the museum with us throughout the day. One of his staff people, interestingly, came from BBC television and has helped him do a lot of the video work this past year. And we found a lot of our content providers that had either set up some pretty intricate type of studio equipment or others that were looking for how to better what they're doing, had some very deep technical talks with some of his resource. Jan and I are considering opening up a video portal in partnership with our co-op so that we can capture and edit together programming from our content providers to create, whether it be morning announcements or new this month, or some kind of regular short-term, maybe called commercial space that could go out to represent all of you that are providing content here with our Center of Interactive Learning. In addition to that, there are some unique services that we will bring forward that a lot of the content providers had interested in, including the multicasting as an alternative to maybe some of the services that were already being procured by the content provider. Specifically, we're interested in learning more about and helping our members with closed captioning, because Tom has a technology that does closed captioning on the fly. We're trying to learn more about our obligations in this space regarding all the handicap accessibility laws that are out there and things that are related, or just are being the right kind of stewards to our members. And video distribution networks. He has networks throughout this country and beyond of especially K-12s that are very video-centric, that have learned to capture, whether it be instruction or activities and events on the fly, and in 3 clicks have that up on the website. It's channelized video. You can subjugate that any way you want. And I believe we're going to pilot putting together our own video space and offering some channels perhaps out to our content providers, or for them to consider if they need this type of resource for their own organization, whether it be for the outreach that we have through Silk or their own outreach for other reasons within their communities. So I think we'll bring a number of services forward. Jan, you're grinning ear to ear, so talk to me, but that was what Tom with JDL Horizons represented to us.
Yeah, I was just chatting with Sean. We're having some jokes. But,
oh, okay.
Alan, do you know Tom Lapping from JDL?
I do not.
I'm surprised. He's been around like 30 years, I think. I've known him forever. But yeah, that's a really interesting area of growth for us. Okay, Ben, we'll see you in a minute. So what I want to just end up with today is percolating some ideas for the global education area. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we've been interested in for years and years and years, and we've dabbled in doing collaborative projects and even some really big projects like kids creating community content, Global Water Day, etc. But the most global educated person I know that's still in the classroom is Sean. So we brought Sean to Minnesota back in June to pick his brain about how we could get more involved with global education via CILC. And we came up with an idea for doing a pilot. So Sean, why don't you tell everybody what we're thinking about doing?
All right. So I guess pulling also meant me visiting my mom and dad. So it was a 2-for-1. But so when I was in Korea at Chadwick, we were PYP, which is an inquiry-based program. Whereas if you're used to the US, it's unit by unit. You're looking at the book, it's minute by minute. It doesn't allow a lot of flexibility when you're in elementary to do virtual field trips. Whereas if you're PYP or primary years program, you're provided 6 weeks. This is what you're supposed to do. How you get there, it's student-led, student-driven, blah, blah, blah.
And that's part of the International Baccalaureate,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
like any of this in-course stuff, it could go into the primary years, which is kindergarten or pre-K, I guess, through 5th grade. And then the middle years program, 6 through 10, and then diploma, whatever. So all of it's very flexible. And as far as like teaching that, I noticed it was a lot easier as like the tech lead 2nd grade teacher to implement virtual field trips, excursions, mystery Skypes, all of that. So I thought this is an unhit area of the world because IB schools are in the US, IB schools are throughout the world. So I've talked to some contacts throughout Asia and have Craig Kemp, who is the mystery Skype guru, huge on Twitter at Samford International School in Singapore. He's definitely keen on jumping in, seeing how it integrates into the PYP. I've got a friend who's from Korea in Kyoto. Now I'm in Milan, Italy. So we've got resources now throughout 2 different continents that are keen to see how it jumps into inquiry-based learning. And then on Friday, I have a Skype set up with the PYP curriculum coordinator from The Hague from International Baccalaureate to talk to them about their ideas and how they think they can intermix with us and we can intermix with them. And then the possibility of content providers. Like right now, it's like you're in 2nd grade. Cool. Here's this. Whereas in like the PYP, we have how things work, all the transdisciplinary themes. So then you go and it streamlines it to the PYP schools around the world, and it will help integrate more inquiry-based field trips instead of just grade-based field trips. So in a nutshell.
So what we're trying to do is connect the schools that he mentioned together with each other to do some sharing this year as sort of a pilot program. But that's just one little piece of it. We also have a partner called Taking IT Global that works with the United Nations to do all kinds of big projects that we want to get our members aware of. So that's another area. But really my goal for just today is to determine if we could have folks on this committee have their own global education subcommittee, just like we have our own lifelong learning subcommittee. So off the top of my head, I was thinking, well, we've got Daryl in Africa, Julie and Ben in Australia. We've got Sean in Milan and other places. And anybody else that is into global education, I think that if we could do a breakout with just us to talk about ideas for how CILC can do better in this space and promote global awareness and these special initiatives that concern all the citizens of the world. Let's just save the world. Is there somebody that I didn't mention in my little short list of global education that would like to be on that committee? You're tired of committees, aren't you?
I know part of our thought process was also to consider that this might be how to reshape and improve on our collaboration center as a core piece within the Center of Interactive Learning.
That's what I was going to jump into that too, Glenn. I forgot to mention that within the PYP to graduate to MYP, you have to do an exhibition project. So within Chadwick, you've got fifth graders that the last, I guess, month or 6 weeks of the school year, they're being paired up with an advisor. This might be a PE teacher, it might be an art teacher, and they might be doing something like global warming. So a PE teacher, they know dodgeball, or no, I'm just saying a random thing, not meaning any offense if any of you are PE teachers. But if we use the collaboration thing, not only will these kids at like IB schools or exhibition schools be able to pair with a possible other global warming fifth grader who's also looking to make an exhibition project, but then they can also double dip into Nepris with an actual professional or whatever. So instead of having a PE teacher Googling about things, you might actually talk to someone who actually knows what in the world's going on, or a fifth grader who's in the same boat, and they can also collaborate, team up, and it might be across the world. So just make it even more engaging and cool.
So we just need to get in front of these IB schools and let them know that they can do that on our site. I do have a meeting, Glenn, with a gal from ICS, which is a company that keeps a database of all the international schools. So I'll be back with you on that. I don't know how much it costs yet. But we're going to definitely invest some time into this whole area. I think it's really the hottest topic out there that we have a connection to. So Ben and Julie and Daryl, are you good with being on a committee about that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd like to join this group specifically as well.
Okay. Well, look for more information along those lines.
And I would be really interested in joining that committee if I could as well, even though I'm just Minnesota.
There's no just
You're
about
in, you're international to me, mate.
Well, there you are in
Minnesota's
Minnesota. You're
practically
international
Canada.
to me too. So
Yeah, you're practically
up north.
Canada.
Okay, so that sounds like we've got a committee. And
we'll send out a poll and get a date locked down maybe tomorrow.
yep,
Okay.
I'll do a poll to find out when you're available. So there's a lot of potential in that area. I know we've had a lot of discussions with Cisco along those lines as well. They've got a new product that Alan mentioned, Spark, that we're going to probably be building into our PLN, which is, if any of you are familiar with Slack, I know Ben knows Slack. It's like a collaboration center, but with Spark, it's one better. You can escalate to video and you can share files and all kinds of cool stuff within the platform. So lots of opportunities for students collaborating as well as educators within CILC. We're getting away from professional development per se, the old-fashioned way. We used to do lots of webinars, like once a month we had a spotlight session, and we'd have tens of teachers coming in and joining us on a webinar platform, but we found that that is not very popular anymore because there's so much free stuff out there that people are not jumping in to get into webinars anymore. They're more likely to get their professional development through their social media or their personal learning network that they, build up over the years.
I
Julie,
just
do you
got through
agree with
telling
that?
my staff that there was death by PowerPoint. Now there's death by webinar.
I agree.
Yep, absolutely.
Totally agree.
Julie, do you agree with that? What do you think?
Yeah, Jan, I do. And the courses that I'm running, I'm going to revamp them. Things have changed. I totally agree with you. The tide is turning. I just need to find some time to do it because, as you know, I'm in the middle of my PhD as well as working full-time at the moment, so things are a bit hectic. But my goal, I think, at this point is to redevelop what I offer into more of a MOOC sort of situation where perhaps the first module is free, but then the next modules become sort of like a $49, $99 bite pieces, things like that. I mean, this is just, something I've been thinking about, rather than that you commit for a 4 or a 10-week course, let's hold hands as we go through it. It really needs to be more just in time, more applicable to the needs of the educator at the moment, not a particular date where it starts, which may not suit them. So that's all going around in my head at the moment, which is typical of what many people are now starting to do. So that's the direction I'll probably be going in the next 12 months.
That's absolutely right on, Julie. Yeah.
That's something we could have a whole meeting, a discussion about.
Yep.
I mean, there might even be people on the committee that don't even know what a MOOC is. And I thought they were going out of style, but maybe not.
Well, yeah, there's a whole conversation about that too. But I think the MOOC, as we traditionally know it, as the massive online learning environment, is not sustainable. But the MOOC I'm talking about is that smaller boutique type of MOOC, where it's something it's like special, more special.
Bite-sized pieces.
Boutique MOOC.
Yeah, and by the way, what really got me was when, so that's micro-learning, those bite-sized pieces, but corporate enterprises are now, there's a corporate MOOC. There's a thing called a corporate MOOC, which does not completely make sense to me, but there is such a thing.
Yeah, and if you look at, what LinkedIn have teamed up with lynda.com, that sort of micro-learning and micro-credentialing, that's where it is now. So that's my direction in the future too.
Yeah.
Julie, you mentioned Anne. Are you talking about Anne Merchant?
Yes, Anne Merchant, yes.
If you would send me her email address, I'd be glad to invite her into the global meeting.
Sure.
Okay. With that phone call, I am going to try to end this meeting on time. Is there anything left you didn't get to say that you'd like to say?
I'd like to carry this last point of discussion forward to maybe our future meeting, because I think we've all just touched on how do we deliver this professional development or our learning moments differently, considering the technologies that we are all working with. And I think Julie's just kind of shaping this in her head, and I'd like to hear a little more follow-up from Julie perhaps next meeting.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sean?
I have a shameless plug. The last 4 years I've done a Flat Stanley project, and I'm looking to step it up to the next notch. By now that I teach K through 5, I guess that means 400 Flat Stanleys compared to 20. So the last 3 years we've hit all 7 continents, gotten about 200 photos every year. Huge helps to CILC, Bennett, Physics, a bunch of people. But if any of you guys would love to help, just shoot me an email, and once school starts, I'll shoot you off a PDF Stanley, and you can help spread the love and forward them on throughout the world to get them even further. Oh, thank you, Ben. You're such a gem.
I can see Flat Stanley in Ghana.
There we go.
Go, Daryl. Okay, so I'm seeing some resources in the chat. So along with the recording of this meeting, I'll send you the text messages or the chat. So if you want to click on something and go to it, you're welcome to.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to let everybody go. I thank you for joining us this evening, this morning, wherever you may be.
Thank
See
you
you later,
all.
guys.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Probably, we'll
Talk to
meet
you next
again in
time.
a couple of months.
I'll see you tomorrow night,
Bye.
Jen.
Okay.